Hello and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta tell you, I'm a little upset. Somebody glued my deck of cards together. I don't know how to deal with it. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna go ahead and take a look at ISS Vanguard from Awaken Realms.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
Well, those kooky kids that brought us Nemesis from Awaken Realms are back, this time with a grand space adventure campaign for 1 to 4 players. Essentially, you and your friends will take on the role of the crew members of the ISS Vanguard as they deal with shipboard problems and crazy planetary adventures. Now, this is a big game. It is a big game. I am not going to do a exhaustive rules overview. I'm just going to tell you the basics, and then we'll go from there. Now, first of all, the game takes place in 2 parts. You have kind of the ship aspect of the game, doing things on your ship, and then you have planetary exploration. Now, both of these things are equally important as they get you further and further to your goal and progress you along the story. Now, you have a big binder that represents your ship, and there are different pages. There are different places to put various cards for different reasons. And at the beginning of the game, you're going to have, depending on how you did during your last planetary explorations or whatever, you'll have kind of currencies to spend, commands, successes, and you can spend these things to do different things on the ship. For instance, you can start conducting research based on discoveries you've made. You can start building things. You can heal people in the medbay. There's different things that you can do here at the beginning of each ship phase. Now, eventually, at some point, however, you're going to need to go and take your ship to another location. You have a star map that you bring out, another little book that you can go ahead and pick what your destination is going to be, which system you're going to, which planet in that system you're going to, etc., etc. So you go ahead and go there. Now, once you get there, there's a procedure for scanning that planet to seeing kind of what kinds of resources are going to be there, and critically, what kind of die you're going to need on that mission, what kind of dice you're going to need on that mission. So you figure that out. Now, that's important because you're going to be selecting crew to go down. Now, you have a ton of different crew cards in this game, different people with different, abilities and whatnot. But what you're going to do is you're going to assign them to one of 4 sections. The sections are science, recon, security, and engineering. Now, that's important because you're going to get different kinds of die for these missions. Now, you do this procedure for landing. I'm not going to go through it here. You land on a planet. You may crash land on a planet. You may be shot down. There's different things that can happen as you're trying to land on these planets. Now, once you land on the planet, you actually have a book of planetary exploration. You turn to a certain page that you're directed to go, and there's going to be some locations that already have stuff printed on them. Some of them are empty and need to be explored. But essentially, what you do is you put your crew members on these certain locations. And they can travel between locations for actions. They can be locked out of traveling between certain locations, or they can go between locations, but there's dice checks or other funky things they have to do in order to travel between those locations. Now, each section has unique cards, and they have unique dice. And that's going to be important because many of these these sections on the game on the planet, these territories you've explored, will require dice checks, and they're looking for specific symbols when you roll die. Now, when you roll die, however, if you ever roll a Vanguard symbol, well, then you're good. That counts as any symbol. It's a wild. Otherwise, you're rolling for these specific kinds of symbols that are not found on every die. Some of the dice have different symbols than other parts of the dice, and the different sections often have different symbols between them. But you also have, every die also has accidents. And if you roll an accident, then you're going to get injured. You draw injury cards. They tell you kind of what kind of injuries you have. And very often, you're going to have to take injury die. So from now on, whenever you roll die, you're going to go ahead and you're going to have to include those injury die in there. Sometimes there may be dangers that pop up. You have to include a danger die in your pool. So when you roll, you actually have to roll a danger die, in which you roll that, you consult the card, seeing what the symbols are, and other kooky things may happen as well. Now, on your turn, you can essentially take two actions. You can travel, you can kind of prepare your deck, you can rest. Critically, that's important because one of the things you're doing is you are, as you're rolling your die, you're kind of moving them from their kind of ready side to kind of an exhausted side. So you take a rest action that's going to, among other things, help you take, I think, about half rounded up of your dice back into your ready area. So that's an important part there. There's other things you can do. You can interact with special actions in some of the locations as well. So you're doing these things, and critically, a lot of these things you're doing is you're doing dice checks. So when you're doing things that the location actually calls for, you're trying to get successes. Sometimes you get success tokens for that. But you're trying to obviously win these things in these specific locations. As you're doing the dice checks, you can actually play cards that will help you manipulate your dice and hopefully get you to that success. Now, one key aspect throughout this game is when you're in space or when you're on a planet, frequently you have to refer to a logbook. It'll say turn to log page, whatever. There's also an app you can use to do this. But you go to the logbook and you look up that specific number, 630 something or whatever the number is. And there's a brief story there that tells you what happens. And it may be followed by a choice you can make. Or it may be instructing you to do something else, go to another log page or place a certain card out there. So there's all different things that can happen, all sorts of different things that can happen when you consult the logbook. But that's really the driver of the story throughout the game. Now, as you're going and you're exploring, there's different things you can do. For instance, there's discoveries all over the board. Sometimes there's unique discoveries where you have to fulfill certain mission requirements in order to get the unique discovery. There's also ways to get actual different kinds of discoveries, like, plant life or animal life or all sorts of things that you can go ahead and draw from, metals, what have you. And those will be important because you can carry a certain amount of things in your ship back to the spaceship, in your shuttlecraft back to the spaceship. So you go ahead, when you're ready, if you've completed the mission, you go back to the landing site and you prepare to take off. And I should point out you do have limited supplies, so you got to keep an eye on your supplies while you're on the planet. Sometimes there's things you can do to get more supplies. Sometimes you're going to go through them. So if you get out of supplies or people get hurt, you're just going to abort the mission. Ideally, you'll be able to complete the mission and return safely. Now, when you return, there's a landing procedure. You go back to the spaceship. Now, once you're on the spaceship, again, you go through certain the secondary spaceship phase. Here, you're going to take any crew member that were injured, you're going to place them in the med bay, and there's a number of card slots. If there's too many people that are injured, some of those people will die. So you got to keep an eye on how many people you've got in the med bay at any time. You've got other things that you can do at that time with the cards. You go through different procedures, and then you're going to ultimately want to move into the next phase, which is selecting where you're going to go. But you can end a particular mission there. There's an envelope for you to save items so that you don't lose anything, and you can pick up right where you left off to continue the campaign. Now, throughout this whole thing, there's all sorts of other things that are going on. Your crew can rank up. They start at a rank 1. You put a sleeve on them. They can go up to rank 2, rank 3. That gives them access to better cards and some more abilities. So that's one of the things that you're going to be doing throughout the game is ranking up your people. But you can do ship upgrades. You can do other kinds of upgrades to characters and all sorts of things. So there's all these different aspects that you're working on as you're playing the game and as you're moving through the story. So players are on their ship. They are down on the planet. They're going through kind of these exploration moments of exploring the planets, but they're also taking care of the ship. They're taking care of injured crewmates. They are building upgrades. They're researching science discoveries. They're making repairs to the ship. There's all sorts of things that are going on in this game as that story progresses. Now, if you can go ahead and proceed through all of the missions and come to the end of the story, then you win ISS Vanguard. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, I'm only showing the screen caps from the first couple of missions here because I don't want to spoil anything. I've not played through the entire campaign. I've just played through the first few missions, and then I'm just showing you, I think, from the tutorial and the first mission here in the screen caps. So you get an idea of what's going on, but I don't want to bring out too many surprises because this game's all about the story, right? So, first of all, this game is a campaign game. It is a campaign game, and generally I shy away from campaign games. I'm not a huge fan of campaign games, because I don't have a lot of time to devote to just one game for that long, because there's so many games I review and other games I like to play with my friends and whatnot. So typically I'm not a huge fan of campaign games in general. But this is kind of interesting in that, it seems like a lot of campaign games I played are games where it's like, like say a dungeon crawl. Okay, we were here, we fight this monster, we do this thing, now we go to the next level. We fight this thing, we go here. And there's this idea of a story that links the different campaigns together, different missions of the campaign together. But it's interesting because in this, it's really all about the story, and there are so many things you can do, and there are so many different possibilities. There's so many, like I said, it's a choose-your-own adventure, and there's so many ways you can go, and so many ways these things play out, that it feels very different in a lot of ways to me. I'm sure there may be other games out there that do this sort of thing and do it well, but again, I don't play a lot of campaign games. So this, to me, was really interesting as far as that goes, as far as building this campaign. The game has a level of epicness that I think is comparable to, say, a Twilight Imperium 4, right? It's when I say that epicness, I mean kind of story-wise, but also component-wise. There are a ton of components in this. You've got, the ship book, you've got the log book, you've got the planetary book, you've got the star maps, you got the rule book. There's all these different kinds of books, and then of course you've got all the different figures, the minis and stuff. You've got so many cards in this game, and I'll tell you right now, unboxing this thing and just getting it ready to play was kind of a bear. It was really, there was a lot to it here. Now, one other thing I should say, the games I played in this campaign have all been solo. Okay, I haven't played this with other people. I've just been playing solo and managing all the characters myself. It is a cooperative game, so that works. And of course, it's billed as one. You play multiple characters at the same time. The game is, but as you're playing through it, like I said, the epicness really comes through. And I think, I love TI4. It's one of my favorite games, and I love it precisely. One of the major reasons I love it is precisely because it is so epic. And this is an epic game, although it's a very different kind of an epic game. But I should say part of it being epic is all those components, all those parts, those moving parts to it. And just like it is epic, it is also a bit overwhelming, particularly when you're learning. There's a bit of a learning curve to this game. There's a lot of a learning curve to this game. Once you master the basics, it starts to become easier, but there's a lot you got to get over. But I kind of feel like with all of these components in this system, with everything they're trying to do, frankly, the minutia of space travel, is there a point of diminishing returns? And I almost kind of wonder, almost kind of wish, maybe if they had made some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of more streamlined aspects of it, and made some of these things optional rules, like the launch procedures going from the ship to the planet and vice versa. Maybe that it could have been streamlined a little more, or you could play the full experience. And I realize maybe that's what they're going for here, is this full epic experience. But do I want that full epic experience every single time? Does it start to feel a little tedious? Yeah, it does a little bit. But nevertheless, the game's strengths, and again, I say game, but it's almost more of an experience, because it doesn't feel like each individual mission doesn't feel like a win-lose kind of a thing, right? It feels more like we're just playing through a story to find out what happens. So it almost feels more like an experience than a game in some respects, although I have not played far enough that maybe some of those other kind of game ideas come out that I missed there. But the game is something very unique, I think, and very different. And there's a lot in this game that I really like a lot. And there's a lot of things, as I say, maybe I wish they could have streamlined a bit, made it a little less is more kind of a thing. But the fact of the matter is, let me just be clear, this game is not for everyone. This game is not for a casual gamer by any means. This is for kind of a hardcore gamer who is willing to commit and put the time into this massive experience, and it is. And I'll tell you right now, you get sucked in. You get sucked into this story. You get sucked into the mechanics for the most part, and it really brings you in. And that's not something a casual gamer is going to be drawn to. But it's something a more experienced gamer could really enjoy. But even among experienced gamers, you're going to have the group kind of like me, who's not a huge fan necessarily of campaign games. If you like story-driven games, I think you will really get a kick out of this. And I had contemplated giving this game a try it before you buy it. But on one hand, how do you do that? It's a campaign game, it's a story game. How do you do it? How are you realistically going to try this a little bit? I kind of feel like once you're in, right? So I want to give this, what I will give this is a buy it recommendation, but no, there are those caveats. This game is not for everyone, and that's something you've got to make that determination of yourself. Do I want to play through this story? I got to be honest with you. I really like this game. I really like it. But I'm not going to just concentrate in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks and play every mission and buzz through it. This is a game I will probably continue to play maybe for years. I'll pull out a mission, I'll play it over the course of a night, and then I probably won't bring it out again for a while. Maybe I'll play 2 missions in a row, and then I won't play it again for several months or something like that. That's kind of where I think I'm coming from. But I think some people will just dive in, eat this up, and want to play through the whole thing in a few days or a week or so. But at any rate, I'm going to say buy it with those caveats. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today and for the Discriminating Gamer. I really appreciate you stopping by. Please, please, please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter. Please leave a comment for us on those platforms. We really love hearing from you and hearing what you have to say. I'd ask you also to go over to Cody Carlson, PhD. That is my other YouTube channel where I talk about military history and books on history and fun things like that. I'm currently putting up some of my lectures from my courses on that channel, so please check that out. And also, too, I would ask you to please leave a thumb for this video. That helps us out a lot, and we really appreciate it. Well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I was really bummed the other day. I was at a bar, and a guy right in front of me got his ear pierced. I'm lousy at darts. Yeah! Yes! Put 2 more on him. Come on, Carmelone, Carmelone, Carmelone. Yes! He's dead. Killed him.